Good afternoon or morning, depending on where in this wonderful world you are. Welcome to another webinar with Pate Group and today, Microsoft. We are so thrilled to have you here for Illuminating Microsoft 365. Today, we're going to focus on enabling modern collaboration. I'm really excited about this topic. We were almost late kicking off because we were so excited. We started without you all. It's a
That's right.
great topic. Oh, we're so excited. If you've never joined us before, welcome. My name is Joy Apple. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a modern workplace strategist at Pate Group. I also host the Joy SharePoint webinar series, another one of those coming up soon, so stay tuned. I've been blessed to be working with Microsoft products and technologies for over 12 years now. I have to say this is the most exciting time for me personally in the product suite because amazing, powerful tools and features are rolling out. Feels like every day. And today we're going to talk about how to manage them together. Richard, how are you?
Doing pretty well, Joy. So good afternoon, good morning, everyone, depending on where you are again. So thanks for joining us. So as Joy had mentioned, we're just super excited about this webinar here today. We're actually excited about our webinars all the time, but thanks for all of you for joining. My role as a modern workplace strategist, just like Joy, we're very much focused around customer success when it comes to Microsoft 365. So we love to talk about anything and everything. You've probably heard a lot lately of us talking about all the great things in Microsoft Teams, and then clearly how all the other sets of applications and tools across Microsoft 365 play together and come together for productivity, personal productivity, team productivity, collaboration, et cetera, et cetera. So again, we were just really fortunate to be able to connect with Rishi Nikolai, who, Rishi, you want to just kind of hand it over to you here briefly to introduce yourself, if you'd like.
Yep, sure. Hi everyone. My name is Rishi Nikolai. I'm one of the strategists here at Microsoft. And what I really look at is how we help employees across organizations harness their attention using the power of Microsoft 365. I'm one of the collaboration leaders at Microsoft, and I'm really happy to be here, Richard and Joy, and thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, fantastic, so much. So let's do what we always do, which is we typically have a little bit of a poll question just to get a little bit of a sense of who's who in the webinar here. So if you would be so kind as to participate, you can get to this poll through the link in the Q&A window. And let's just see what we have going on here in terms of responses at the moment. So let's see if we can get a little bit of refreshing happening here. Okay, I've got one response at the moment here, but just asking some basic questions in addition to what your role and your function is. Want to understand a couple of things just in the context of today's webinar. So when it comes to personal productivity, for example, in the workplace, had a couple of examples of things that maybe might apply to you. So just interested to understand. And so we've got certainly a few here at the moment that are saying, quite often I'll get too many emails, too many notifications. That's certainly something that can tend to impede your productivity, and then needing more time to do your job. Absolutely, I think that's applicable to all of us for sure. And then another question, just in terms of within your organization, how often or do you ever really hear that question centered around which tool do I use and when in Microsoft 365? And it looks like at least one of you said that you see it all the time, you hear it all the time, maybe others infrequently, that's good. And then also just interested to know if your organization has used any kind of or implemented any kind of a modern workplace adoption program. It looks like from our responses so far that yes, you have, but still needing some more work. So I'm certainly interested to understand more about that and just kind of get a sense of what kinds of processes and what are you putting in place to be able to drive the adoption of Microsoft 365. I've got a few more inputs coming in here at the moment. So thanks for participating in the poll, everybody, really appreciate it. And feel free to just jump in at any point in time and answer those poll questions. Happy to take those responses from you along the way, so thanks. Okay, so Rishi, I guess I could hand it over to you. I know you had some slides that you might want to go ahead and share with us.
Yeah, coming straight up.
Okay.
And while those slides are transitioning, if you are one of those people, and I think we all do from time to time, say, yes, I get too many emails. I think one of the things we're going to discover today, and for me, this has been an eye-opening journey just coming up to speed for this webinar today, is, there's not a magic button to say, well, let's implement another tool and that'll take the chaos away. And that's something that I'm very excited to dig into, because we have a lot of attention grabbers to kind of latch on to the topic today that seem to be coming at us. And it's not just at work. I think we can easily say that since we've moved to our home offices as well, we seem to be pulled in even more directions. So I'm super excited. Again, Rishi, I can't say enough how much we appreciate you taking your time to come join us and help us dive into this today.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Joy. Now I'm going to keep the pace quite fast. So if you have questions, please interject with questions, and I'll rely on Richard and Joy to point me in the right direction with the questions. But really what I'm here to talk about today is the modern collaboration architecture. And this is sort of Microsoft's attempt at looking at how we help our customers, our partners, look at making the best of how they spend their time, not just how much time they spend when they're trying to get their work done. And one of the concepts that we are starting to see become more and more prevalent is the concept of collaboration overload, where we are finding that people are doing a lot of what they think is collaboration. So I work with a lot of customers who are spending a lot of time having meetings. They're finding that even though they're doing a lot of work, that is not necessarily yielding in the same proportion of productivity. And so at this point, we've got to take a step back and really think about what is it that we mean when we talk about collaboration. So I did what I typically do as an academic. I go back to the dictionary to better understand what the word collaboration means. Yeah. And unfortunately, what I found the word collaboration in the dictionary to mean was quite vague. So the dictionary calls collaboration as the act of working with other people or organization to create or achieve something. And though this is an accurate definition of collaboration, for us to guide employees through what good looks like, it's actually incomplete. And so I was looking for other inspiration with regards to how do we guide people so they can make the best of their attention. And this is where I came across a quote from Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft. And I guess what really resonated with me about this quote is that Satya talks about the true scarcity of our attention as a commodity, and that we only have finite amount of attention available to us in our life. And so the importance of ensuring that we are applying our attention in the most appropriate time, in the most appropriate way, is something that started to grow as something that was really top of mind for me. So I guess coming from this perspective of our attention being probably the most valuable commodity that all of us have in our lifetimes, with this context, I took a step back and said, wait a minute, why are we doing this whole Microsoft 365 in the first place? Why is collaboration important for an organization? And then based on that, we came up with what we are calling as the collaboration pyramid. And within the collaboration pyramid, what we really talk about, every organization is here to achieve business outcomes. And in order for them to achieve these business outcomes, they need people to collaborate. And research tells us that collaboration is a set of behaviors. It's a combination of a common goal, effort that people within the team put in, and commitment from everyone. So if you look at collaboration, it is not SharePoint, it's not Teams, it's not Yammer, it's not a tool as such. Collaboration is a set of behaviors that brings people together, and we use technology to enhance that. And the two key areas of technology that the modern collaboration architecture focuses on is how humans communicate. What is the flow that makes us tick? And the second part is the information flow. How is it that we share information? And how do we make sure that the right information is being shared with the right people at the right time, so we can have the most impact on the attention that is being applied to that task at that particular moment? And with all this, right, and what we are starting to talk a lot more about is the attention is really the basis of human productivity. And so if we are finding that we're a little bit distracted, or there are lots of other things going on, and as a lot of you may have experienced over the last few months, you have all been working from home with kids running around, trying to do homeschooling, with your partners in the other room. People are calling out for what you want for lunch while you're trying to get through a really important meeting. It has been a very challenging time for the world. And so before I talk more about collaboration and the tools, I wanted to sort of take a step back with all of you and talk a little bit about how our attention works. And so I've spent the last few years researching as a member of the psychology profession with regards to how do we better use our attention. And so I'll work with you on an example of, say, a weekly report that many of us have to often put together. So say you have to put a weekly report together, and for the purposes of this illustration, this little red dot that you see on the screen, that is your attention. Right? Now, in real life, our attention is not a little red dot walking around a screen, but see if you can follow the journey of this red dot. And I think that will help you focus your attention on how it moves from different activities at different times. So say you're trying to get a weekly report done and you are spending some time getting the report done. And so your attention is following the report as the time goes along. And then suddenly, in the corner of your eye, you see a little pop-up from John, and it's an email notification. And obviously we are all email junkies, and we click on that notification and we start reading that email straight away, just in case it's something important that we may be missing. But what's happened in that interaction is your attention, that little red dot, has actually jumped from the activity of that weekly report to your first distraction, the email. And at this time, you may have read the email and you decide, well, I'll respond to John a little bit later. But here are a few things that have already happened. Your attention has been distracted, right? And so let's see what happens when your attention gets distracted. And this is where neuroscientist and psychologist Dr. Daniel Levitin from the University of Montreal did a fair bit of research on the location of the brain components that actually harness and control our attention. And what he found is that the seat of our attention is within the insula of our brain, within the inner part of the brain. And it's the insula that is near our optic chiasm that actually controls which activities our attention goes to, right? So it's really the master and commander of our attention. And so the other part of research that Dr. Daniel Levitin found is that we are actually biologically incapable of multitasking. So every time you read a job description where it says must be very good and effective at multitasking, I'm sorry, that's actually a biological myth. It doesn't really exist. Because as you can see on the screen, there is only one red dot, and it can only focus on one thing at a time. So when we try and do too many things at the same time, we end up what's called as fractioning our attention. We are not using our whole attention on any one thing. We are splitting our attention into smaller parts, and that gives us the illusion of multitasking. But at the same time, what we end up doing is not focusing on any one thing completely. And what you may find is that there are some easier things that you can still do in the background while you are doing other activities. But as soon as you get onto a complex task that requires your focused attention, multitasking is really, really distracting. So now you have been distracted. Now you need to bring your attention back to the weekly report. Now watch very carefully what happens to that little red dot. All right. And what you may have noticed is that it hasn't jumped back to where it left off. It actually had to recap the work that had been previously done. And that's because the way our attention moves through the neural pathways in our brain, because our memory is cumulative. So what that means is that every time we store something in our brain, it is stored in relation to something else. And as a result, the neurons in our brain create neural pathways, which is like a stepping stone of how memory is stored. So in order for us to get to a concept, we actually have to retrace the pathways, the stepping stones, and that's really where the rework part comes in every time we want to come back to doing something. So distraction has a cost. And as you'll notice that while you're still doing your weekly report, you have your friend comes and says hello. That distraction, once again, has an even greater cost when you go back to doing the weekly report. And just before you thought you were finished, right, your good friend Matt sends you a message on Teams, and once again, you're distracted. And that creates an even greater neural load when you want to come back and finish your weekly report. The other thing you may find is that because of that neural load, there is a decrease in efficacy. So you feel like that you're taking even longer to do something that should be relatively simple to do. And as a result, your motivation to go back and do and completing that task drops, right? Because your brain just thinks like, oh, it's too hard. Why is it taking so long? So there is a significant cost of that distraction. And though technology is here to help us get our work done quicker, unless we are cognizant of this, it can actually have a greater negative impact in our work environments than we have predicted. So the question is, well, how do we manage this? This all seems quite straightforward, but how do we manage this monkey brain? Right? And this is where research, and I worked quite deeply with a researcher in Sydney called Dr. Ramesh Manocha, who specializes in attention management practices. And he discovered a technique called mental stillness or thoughtless awareness, which actually helps build the strength of our attention like a muscle. So just like we go to the gym and we train our muscles and we eat healthy, right? And once again, that is helps our physical fitness. Using thoughtless awareness and mental stillness exercises helps us with our attention and the fitness of our attention. And as part of the research, we used a particular app that we had a whole range of kids with ADHD used to strengthen their attention. And what we found is at the end of the research program, kids with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, right, were able to strengthen their attention so much that most of them were off their medication and they were able to live life normally.
Wow.
And so if we know that kids with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are able to strengthen their attention that much, as professionals, right, we can definitely leverage these capabilities to further improve the way we get work done. So in addition to this, some other key tips that I would keep in mind is things like use My Analytics to help you build in focus time in your calendar, because then you are dedicating time to get your work done and your day is not being taken up by meetings. And remember, each meeting requires you to switch context, which is once again providing additional neural load. And even with video in your meetings, see if you can minimize the number of videos you have on screen at the same time, because you're creating additional neural load for your unconscious every time you're looking at too many different faces, because your brain is trying to decode emotions of every single face on screen all the time. So yes, you can have up to 49 videos on screen, but that comes up with a neural cost.
Yeah.
Right. So think about that. Look at minimizing your notifications. So wherever you can use Yammer for community management and Teams for teamwork, see if you can use those preferred tools for that preferred job. Use the focus assist features in Windows, because that will help you reduce unnecessary notifications. And managing employee workload, especially at this time where we can't really be with a lot of our employees as they work from home, is really crucial. Research has shown that at the moment during the COVID-19 pandemic, employees are working 30% more compared to what they were working when they were in the offices. And this has a significant impact on the life-work balance. I'm sorry, I don't call it the work-life balance. It's really the life-work balance. And we've got to help our people manage this impact. And this is really where the modern collaboration architecture comes in. It's there to help us think about how do we put a human-first approach to helping our employees work with productivity. And this is with the support of the right security, the right governance, and the right compliance features within the Microsoft 365 suite of technologies. So before I jump into the modern collaboration architecture, Richard, are there any questions that I should be addressing at this time?
No questions that came up just yet, although I had a number of thoughts. I just didn't want to interrupt you and appropriately break your concentration on what you were describing there. But really just relating to so much of what you were saying, I think about just some of the basic things around my house. My wife and I share the responsibility of who's cooking dinner from one day to the next, and we have a few little ones that run around the house. And so just trying to do something that seems really simple, like preparing one meal that should only take so long, can certainly drag out into an extremely lengthy bit of time there because of just the number of distractions that are coming up. Or maybe it's even that you're preparing two different types of things, one that she and I are going to eat, and then maybe a kind of a simpler, more kid-friendly meal that they're going to eat. And so now I'm multitasking, or at least I think I'm multitasking at that point. So I just was going to comment that so much of what you're describing there really resonated with me.
Okay, great. So in that case, let me talk to you all about the modern collaboration architecture and how we have put that together. So what the architecture really talks about is that at the end of the day, it is the individual that we have really brought into the organization, and we are there to harness their skills and their experience and their mindset to help us deliver the outcomes that we are looking to deliver. And so every time we hire an individual into the organization, we give them a set of KPIs. And so that starts to create a set of behaviors around which that individual works. And the modern collaboration architecture is really grounded about enabling every single individual think about what productivity means for them and what collaboration means for them and how they will apply these different applications and tools to their everyday work so they can best harness their attention. And so while we create a framework for that individual, we also need to be cognizant that people need to perform a number of different activities throughout their day to do what they need to do. So they need to do things like send and receive information, they need to manage their tasks, they need to find the right people, they've got to find their files, right? That's a really important part of an individual's work. They've got to organize their workspaces because they've got to be very systematic around what they're doing when, so not get too distracted and create a sense of clarity. They've got to chat with others, right, and making sure that they get access to the right information at the right time. And sometimes it would be awesome to automate activities. So where we are doing something manually, if we can automate that, wouldn't that be wonderful? And so to help individuals apply their ability to get work done in a more effective way, Microsoft 365 Suite provides a number of different applications to help specifically with those tasks that individuals need to think about. And I guess this is one of the key things that Microsoft is trying to do as part of this model, is to provide clarity that each one of these tasks is a very specialized set of skills that an individual as a professional develops over time. And to apply these professional set of skills, we need very tailored tools. And so there is no one tool to do everything. We have a whole range of specialized tools that work together to help individuals get work done. And so as you can see, we've got OneDrive that looks at storing files. We have Outlook, which still has a very important place in sending and receiving one-way instructions, right? We have My Analytics that's helping people reflect on their behaviors. And honestly, that is by far my favorite tool of the M365 suite of technologies. We have Microsoft Teams that's playing a very important part in meetings, in keeping that interaction with others. And to develop documents, we have a whole range of Microsoft apps that you all know and you love, that you have been using for a while. Some of the new things that I'm seeing organizations use more and more are around automation of tasks. So you can see there are some new tools there. We have the Power Platform suite, and then we have the Power BI dashboards that are available specifically for measuring KPIs for an individual. So for example, here at Microsoft, all of us have our personal KPIs that we are being measured against for our performance, available to us as Power BI dashboards that I go and visit on a regular basis, especially before I'm having a conversation with my manager around the things that I've achieved over the last couple of weeks and what I'm planning to do over the next couple of weeks. So I'm really using these tools as part of my everyday life. Now, Outlook is a really interesting one, and I do want to talk about it a little bit, because I personally don't see Outlook as a collaboration platform. And I know over the last few years, right, while all the other tools were sort of maturing, email was our lifeblood. We did everything over email. But given that the email platform is also evolving, I see email as a great sanctuary. Outlook is now my sanctuary. I know it sounds really weird, right? Because that's usually the point of anxiety for most people around the planet. But really, the behaviors that have been evolved around me, I go to Outlook to organize myself. I go there to organize my time, my thoughts. This is where I get to see the work that's coming in for me, any really critical communications that the organization has for me that I need to action. And so thinking about email is no longer just a information distribution tool, right? Email has to be very carefully used to give people actions that are urgent, that are important, that you need people to action. But at the same time, you also have to appreciate that email is an asynchronous mode of communication, which means people will action those emails that you have sent in their own time, right? So if, for example, if Richard sends me an email, right, I will make time when I have time to action that email. And if I've sent Richard an email, I can't go to him 5 minutes later and say, Richard, have you read my email yet? You haven't responded to it yet, right? So email is an asynchronous mode of communication, and I use the Outlook environment for me to organize myself. And this is where I find that email has its strength. So we've spent some time talking about individual productivity. And so let's see how we get our individual to do more. Because as an autonomous individual, you can only do so much. Whereas if you are brought in with a group of people that you can work together with, you can be a lot more impactful. And this is really the concept where a concept of a team comes in. And so we have given a team a definition. So a team is a group of individuals with interdependent activities that work together towards a common goal. And there are two key aspects of this definition. So the first one is interdependent activities. So for example, I've got myself, Richard, and Joy in a team. So the work that I'm doing is then used and consumed by Richard, and then he builds onto that work, and then Joy builds onto the work that Richard has put in. And all of us have separate set of expertise that we are bringing into solving this problem. So as you can see, a team is a very intentional compilation of people that have specific skills that we need to achieve the second part of the definition, which is a common goal. And so if people are not on the same page around what the team is trying to achieve, very often that conflict is what creates additional requirement and it creates a lot of rework, right? Which once again, we know people are already busy and we don't need to create rework for people. So let's see how the Microsoft 365 suite helps to enable teams. And so teams, to start off with, need to have clear outcomes defined. What are we trying to achieve? Who is the team leader who is creating the direction for this outcome? And making sure that we are working with the leader's direction is also really critical to success within a team environment. We've got to make sure we have clearly defined processes. So something happens, then somebody else does something with it, and then it goes to the third step, and this happens, right? So ensuring that we have clarity around the direction of the work is also critical. And then once we have that direction, now you can identify the skills that are required to complete the work, and you can create clear roles and responsibilities. Richard, this is your role. Joy, this is your role. Rishi, this is your role. And this is how we will all work together to deliver this outcome within this allocated period. And so to help the team individuals come up with delivering the outcome within the time, we have a whole range of capabilities that they need to perform. So they need to be able to send and receive instructions. They need to be able to manage team tasks, store team files. They need to be able to have regular team meetings, even though they may be stand-up meetings that are for 15 minutes a day at the beginning of the day. They need to be able to market the team outcome to the rest of the organization. So the rest of the organization knows that that outcome exists and they can leverage it. They need to be able to chat with team members, manage performance, but also ideate. And I know a lot of us are used to getting on a whiteboard as a team and scribbling around and spending that time innovating. Well, in the digital world, we can do similar things using the M365 suite of technologies. So for ideation, you can use the whiteboard app within the Microsoft 365 suite. To market people and share information, you can use SharePoint. Obviously, as you can see, Teams is playing a very significant part of how a team collaborates. Planner is a great application to help manage tasks because it creates transparency on what everybody is working on. And so, for example, if I'm running behind with my activity, Richard can see that Rishi is running behind with his activity, and maybe he can offer some help if he has a bit of time. So once again, it creates that rapport within the team members if we create that visibility. Storing team files is an important one. So every time we have a project, right, where we have everybody working together within that team, I always use Teams where I manage files first. And where I have independent libraries that need to be used, maybe across multiple teams or across the whole organization, that's where I defer to SharePoint. What I'm always keeping in mind is that the files are in the Office 365 ecosystem, and I don't put them on my C drive or on my local computer, where it's going to make it difficult for me to share those documents. So just like Outlook is my sanctuary for my individual thoughts, Microsoft Teams is the hub for teamwork. This is where we bring the like-minded people together who are able to deliver those outcomes quicker, faster, cheaper, and easier. And this is where Teams is really that platform where we are seeing Microsoft partners develop lots of new innovative applications to help further expedite how different teams, especially special interest teams, right, get work done. So I would really encourage you to go and check out all the different apps that are available for Microsoft Teams to see which one of them will help your team get work done quicker, faster, and easier. And so if you think about teamwork, we are often a part of multiple teams at the same time. And we can't really know everything there is to know about everything to be on the top of our game every single time. There is just too much to know. And this is where we've got to make sure that each individual within our organization is constantly learning and growing and becoming even more effective as both an individual and also a team member. And this is where the 70-20-10 readiness strategy comes in. And so what this readiness strategy talks about is 70% of all our learning happens when we are working in a particular role. It's on the job learning. 20% of all our learning comes from mentors, from coaches, and from us observing other experts do what they do best. And there's only 10% of all our learning comes from formal courses that we do. So, Richard, let me ask you this question. How many people do you work with closely on a daily basis?
Inside our organization, at least 4 or 5, and then when it's with my customers, it can be, any number past that, obviously 3 times that many.
Okay, there you go. So we've got about 4 or 5 core people within the organization, yep. And we've got, say, another 10 or 12 people, right? So can we run that up to about 14 people?
Sure.
Yeah. So research shows that most people, like Richard, work closely with about 8 to 16 people closely on a daily basis. So Richard, now think about this, right? You work with 14 people. 70% of all your everyday learning is coming from those 14 people. Right? Now, for all of you on the call, now think about who these people are. Now, for some of you, that would be a very happy thought. For some of you, it could be a bit of a scary thought, right? So depending on who you work with and the people you surround yourself is a significant part of how you learn and grow as an individual. At Microsoft, I always try and make sure that I'm surrounding myself with people who are so much smarter than me, right? So I spend all my days learning and absorbing from them so I can constantly learn and grow. And so think about where you are in your organization. Are you the smartest person in the room, right? If you are you surrounding yourself with the right people? And is that helping you learn and grow as an individual? And so if we typically work with about 8 to 16 people within our daily work, how do we expand that? And how do we learn from even a greater number of people? And really, this is where communities come in. And so a community is defined as a group of individuals with a common interest. And this common interest gives us an opportunity to gravitate towards a group of people and learn from them. And so if you look at the way communities work within an organization, and I'm sure all of you have multiple communities within the organizations where you work, an organization is really designed around an interest, around a passion that brings everybody together. You have a community facilitator that's looking at the overall interactions. And a community is really bringing in ideas from across the organization where you have an opportunity for those ideas to clash. And as a result, innovate something new, create something out of the ashes. And really the membership of a community is based on that interest. And so if you look at communities, they also have a whole range of things they need to do in order to create healthy communities. And yes, Yammer is our community management platform within the Microsoft 365 suite of technologies. And you can see we have SharePoint that comes and help, and Streams that come and help. And Teams also plays a very important part in ensuring that the community members have some time together to discuss things in real time. But really, Yammer is the core community management platform that is the one place where people come together to share, communicate, and really discuss their ideas and seek advice from people across the organization outside of the core group that they work with. And so it's important to understand how teams and communities are different. And so the way I see them, they are two sides of the same coin. And in order for us to help organizations build healthy networks, we need both teams and communities to be healthy. So teams, if you look at the characteristics of a team, because of the interdependency of the individuals within the team, your membership is predefined, right? So I've got Richard and Joy and myself in the team, because we all have skills that are required. And Richard can't decide that he doesn't want to be a part of the team anymore because we need his skills. They are important to us achieving the outcome. So the membership of a team is mandatory because it relies the inclusion of the right skills. And because of that interdependency, right, you don't want too many chefs in the kitchen. And so research has also told us that a high performing team has about 5 to 12 team members that are working together for that outcome. And so if you have a team that is larger than that, or you're trying to achieve an outcome that requires larger than 12 members, what I would encourage you to think about is how you would break that larger initiative into smaller components. Maybe think about how you would use team channels to organize those different components so you can create clarity on how people are coming together and getting their small part of work done. Because it is creating that distribution of team activities between a range of 5 to 12 people that will give people clarity on what they need to get done. And so that's a really important aspect of how a team comes together. Communities, on the other hand, your membership is optional because it's really based on your interest. And Joy can come and join a community or leave a community as she feels the need to as part of her job. So, for example, Joy has been asked to step in as a project manager at the moment, and she would like to learn the latest project management best practices, right? So she goes to a project management community and seeks their guidance. And a couple of weeks later, she's been asked to put together a Power BI dashboard to show the latest progress that the team's been able to make. And so this is where Joy can go and join the Power BI users community, learn what she needs to, and then leave the community when she doesn't need to be engaged on an ongoing basis. So your community membership is really based on your interests. And this is where we find that people feel like that they are enabled to make decisions on how they engage within their organization, which is very different to a team rhythm. The larger the community, the more perspectives you have access to, the more knowledge you have at your fingertips, and the more people that can help you. Being a part of a community that has 5 members, probably quite not as impactful as if you had, say, a couple of 100 people in a community. And you can see that that's quite different to a teamwork, right? When you are in a team, you are intentionally creating a silo for yourself. So you can focus, you can manage your attention and get work done, which is a very different rhythm to that of a community. And so while communities focus on learning, innovating, capturing that organizational wisdom that will be leveraged by future generation of employees and focuses on employee engagement, teamwork is really there to ensure that we deliver the outcomes that are of strategic priority to the organization. And so this is where that team rhythm and the community rhythm really come together. And just to round it off, we have a 4th set of capability, and we call that the organizational capabilities. And these are the fundamental foundational capabilities that each organization needs to be a part of. And this really helps to drive the cultural norms within the organization. And this is where I would encourage all of you to think about how you work with your leadership team and how you get them to be active and visible in leading this change across your organization. And so this core set of capabilities include things like how do you understand your organizational behavior, video publishing, corporate news and corporate communications, the ability to create your own simple apps, creating information using forms like Richard and Joy demonstrated just earlier in the call. You can use lists as a major new application that's helping to manage lists of things across the organization. And obviously Microsoft Teams plays a very important role in both live streaming events, like you're seeing now, as well as in managing shift work. So there's a whole range of different capabilities that provide the foundation to a good collaboration architecture within every organization. And I would encourage every organization to think about a very deliberate strategy for each one of these apps within your organization. And these organizational capabilities are really there to harness the importance of communities, individuals, and teams within your organization. So when customers and partners ask me, Rishi, what is Microsoft 365? The way I explain that using the modern collaboration architecture is that Microsoft 365 is there to help every individual achieve their work satisfaction by applying their skills and their experience within the context of the right mindset to their everyday work. So they can be an even more effective team member. So they can deliver team outcomes for their organization quicker, faster, cheaper, and easier, aligned to the strategic priorities at the time. So they can leverage from communities across their organization so they can constantly learn and grow and become an even more effective individual supported by the organizational capabilities. And this is where the modern collaboration architecture has been designed to provide the right support for which app when, so the individual can harness their attention and apply it in the most effective way to manage their life-work balance. So giving a few resources that people may wish to go and check after this presentation. We have the aka.ms/MOCA website that will give you a little bit more information on MOCA. A lot of the presentations that you are seeing today are all available for you to download and share within your organizations or with your customers. There is a virtual hub that's also available that gives you some additional video instructions, and there are some customer testimonials and how some of the other Microsoft customers have used the modern collaboration architecture there. And you also have the driving adoption blog, and the driving adoption blog really walks you through all the different thought leadership that Microsoft is working on, working with psychologists across the industry on what it really means to harness attention for our employees across the organization. There is also some guidance on how to build mental resilience and mental stillness practices. So you can go to aka.ms/mental stillness to get access to a free app for iOS and Android that you can use to sort of build in mental stillness rhythms within your day. And I would encourage all the organizations that are looking at driving a modern work initiative to look at change management as a supporting platform to help your people through the change. And I know that Microsoft has signed up to the ProSci methodology, and I'm one of the ProSci advanced instructors that help educate people on how to use good change management practices to drive good outcomes, especially while we are transitioning people from how they do work today to how they should be doing work in the future. And with that, that is all that I have to present for today. Back over to you, Richard and Joy, for any questions from our audience.
Well, fantastic, Richie. Thanks so much for that. That was extremely informative, and I think maybe you just overwhelmed our audience with so much great knowledge, because we don't have any additional questions in the QA at the moment. So again, if anyone does have questions, feel free to pop them in here while we have Rishi in the webinar. But I did have a couple of thoughts that just kind of came to mind. So, and you answered one of them, really, was that whole notion around how do you introduce MOCA and talk about that in the context of when someone says, well, what is Microsoft 365? You know, this is a type of question that obviously Joy and I get quite a bit when we're engaging with new customers. They just want to kind of get a general understanding of what are we really talking about here, and what are all these various capabilities, and what is the benefit, and so forth. And one of the things I just really, really like about the modern collaboration architecture is that ability to be able to tell that story. And I really, really gravitated towards how you started off by talking about it from an individual perspective, because again, you know, so often we're talking to organizations about, you know, if we could just help your people figure out the what's in it for me, right? What the one thing, at least, what's in it for me as an individual, then that at least starts that process of trying to get them invested in understanding it's valuable, and you can really start to drive meaningful outcomes at that point. So starting off by talking about from an individual perspective, and here are all the things that you as an individual are bringing to the table as a professional, and then where Microsoft 365 tools help support that. I just think that's fantastic. That's such a great way to talk about it. I'm also really, really keen to the way that you're addressing the differences between when you might use Teams versus when you might use Yammer. I know that a number of our customers, they'll immediately come to us and go, well, why do I want to use two different tools that seem so similar in so many ways, especially when it comes to the conversations side of things, where you can chat and have conversations in Teams, or you can go into communities in Yammer and obviously post and so forth. So, if you, assuming you get that type of question again, you addressed it earlier, but what is the kind of 30-second way that you would address to a kind of a dissenting customer who's saying like, no, I'm not convinced, I think I just want to use Teams, or I'm not convinced on the use of Yammer? What is the way that you respond to that pretty quickly?
Yeah, great question, Richard. So usually what my guidance is that Yammer is a lot of community information, right? It's a lot of nice to know, whereas Teams is things I need to know right now to deliver that outcome. And unless I do, there is interdependencies with other people that are impacted. And so to be able to make sure that your attention is going on the right work at the right time is really important. And so if you look at the way notifications work in Teams, every time a post comes, you get notified. And so what you don't want is a community and a team, or multiple communities, and the number of notifications that generates, diluting the very critical and important priority work that you need to deliver, that other people are relying on you to get done. And so this is where Yammer and communities sort of help to keep that need to know, but at the right time, separate to Teams and our need to action right now. Now, for people who are still not convinced, and maybe their organization is not large enough to have two very different rhythms, there is also a Yammer app available for Teams. So you can always use the Yammer app in Teams to get access to all the Yammer conversations in the one place. My only caution to that is please make sure that your employees understand that attention management is driven by notifications, and that they need to manage and turn notifications off for things that are not of priority to them at that particular time. So making sure that we have notification management training that's delivered is going to be really critical to harnessing that attention.
Interesting. Notification management training. I can't even say I really have thought about that one before, but that's a really interesting one. Yeah.
That came to my mind significantly the other day when I was first jumping into this and I train people all the time. Don't let Teams notifications become noise, because then it becomes like one more email in your overflowing inbox. It doesn't do you any benefit at that point if you start to become numb to it. But now I have began evaluating how I've been getting so frustrated in the last year when I'm trying to work on something, and Richard needs this, and then someone needs that, and then and Richard, you're trying to work on documentation, Joy needs this, and Ollie needs that, and Stacy needs this, and it's like you go into Hulk mode. And it has recently all become clear since I started reading your content. It's because I'm chipping away at my focus, and I'm eroding my ability. To pivot quickly, Matthew brought up a good point. And Matthew, friend, I'm right there with you. He said, I thought Yammer is for the organization, but Teams is for a specific group. I think this conversation leads us to evolve that concept and say Yammer is for groups of practice, not for project groups. Maybe that would be a more modern way to say it. Learn with your community, but work in your group in Teams.
Yeah, and Joy, that definitely resonates, and I've got a comment on a note that I'm seeing from Joe Dunn in the comments where he's talking about that efficiency experts is very 20th century, and that's true, right? And effectiveness is what we're looking at, and so the way I look at this, and Joe, I completely agree with you. The way I look at it, efficiency is my efficiency, because at the end of the day, I want to use my commodity, attention, right, in the most effective way for me. Effectiveness is the outcome of that. So that's what the organization is looking to achieve. That's what the team is looking to achieve. So yes, effectiveness is what exactly we should be measuring. For me as an individual, I'm very fussy about where I spend my attention. So I want to make sure that I'm getting the biggest bang for my buck. So I definitely agree with your point. I see there is room for both, but yes, you are correct. Effectiveness is what most organizations and most teams should be looking to measure, and not just efficiency. So I completely on board with that comment, and that's a really good call out.
Yeah, I think it really evolves the thought around this type of training that you can offer to your organization, which, you know, one of the questions I'd asked in the poll earlier was around whether your organization currently has implemented a type of a modern workplace adoption program, whatever you would consider that to be. And oftentimes in our customers, that can be driven from the IT organization. You know, they think of Microsoft 365 tools as a technology that's being delivered, and so therefore the IT team would own the ability to go forth and train your end users on how to use these tools and so forth. And again, one of the things that I've really latched onto here in this conversation is so much of what you talk about in MOCA here is not just about the tools. The tools themselves and the technology is supporting and enabling the individual and the teams and the communities, et cetera, to be able to actually achieve something. But really, at the end of the day, it's about the people. It's about helping people understand, for example, like you just said, notification management. Well, why is that important? And yes, there is a how-to eventually to figure out ways to be able to manage notifications from being a distraction, et cetera, and so forth. But to really get to the goal of what is it, why am I trying to minimize those distractions, and what am I trying to achieve, and so forth, there's a whole set of training, I would say, that is an opportunity for our customers to really be thinking about in those types of adoption programs. That, again, it goes so much more above and beyond just the tools themselves.
Yep, definitely.
Well, okay. I mean, time just flies by when you're having fun at this point. Yeah. Let me take over screen share here again, just for the moment. And that way we can, at the very least, just kind of wrap up with our closing slide, as we often do. So we want to thank you all for joining. Certainly want to say a very appreciative thanks to Rishi Nikolai for joining us today. This was a hugely informative webinar. Would love to be able to continue this dialogue some more. So thanks again for that. And then for those of you, that want to reach out to us directly, who maybe you want to have some more of those conversations with your customers around these types of topics and how you can really focus your attention and get a better understanding as to how do you apply the tools at the right place at the right time for the right purpose, reach out to us. You can reach out to us on Twitter. We're out there pretty regularly. We have our email addresses, obviously. Those QR codes take you to our LinkedIn profile, so please go and connect with us. We'd love to connect with all of you as well. And what do we have next week going on, Joy? It looks like we're doing it. Oh yeah, we're doing a webinar around the Tasks app in Microsoft Teams, which is a really cool new addition to tasks management in the Microsoft 365 set of tools. So with that, again, thanks everybody for joining. We sincerely appreciate it. Thank you, Rishi. Thanks, Joy, and all. And have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.